There is a section of the western Atlantic off the southeast coast of the United States, forming what has been termed a triangle, extending from Bermuda in the north to southern Florida, and then east to a point through the Bahamas past Puerto Rico to about 40 degrees west longitude, and then back again to Bermuda. This area occupies a disturbing and almost unbelievable place in the world's catalog of unexplained mysteries. This is usually referred to as the Bermuda Triangle, where more than 100 planes and ships have literally vanished into thin air, most of them since 1945, and where more than 1,000 lives have been lost in the past 26 years, without a single body or even a piece of wreckage from the vanishing planes or ships having been found. Disappearances continue to occur with apparently increasing frequency, in spite of the fact that the seaways and airways are today more traveled, searches are more thorough, and records are more carefully kept. Many of the planes concerned have vanished while in normal radio contact with their base or terminal destination until the very moment of their disappearance, while others have radioed the most extraordinary messages, implying that they could not get their instruments to function, that their compasses were spinning, that the sky had turned yellow and hazy on a clear day, and that the ocean, which was calm nearby, didn't look right, without further clarification of what was wrong. One group of 5 planes, a flight of Navy TBM Avengers, on a mission from the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station on December 5, 1945, were the object, along with the Martin Mariner sent to rescue them and which also disappeared, of one of the most intensive ground-sea rescue operations ever conducted, although no life rafts, oil slicks, or wreckage was ever located. Other aircraft, including passenger planes, have vanished while receiving landing instructions, almost as if, as has been mentioned in Naval Board of Inquiry procedures, they had flown through a hole in the sky. Large and small boats have disappeared without leaving wreckage, as if they and their crews had been snatched into another dimension. Large ships, such as the Marine Sulphur Queen, a 425-foot-long freighter, and the USS Cyclops, 19,000 tons with 309 people aboard, have simply vanished, while other ships and boats have been found drifting within the triangle, sometimes with an animal survivor, such as a dog or canary, who could give no indication of what had happened, although in one case, a talking parrot vanished along with the crew. Unexplained disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle have continued to the present day, and no plane or ship is reported as overdue and finally classed as search discontinued by the 7th Coast Guard, without the expressed or unexpressed comment or feeling among the public or the searchers that there is some connection with the past and present phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle. There seems to be a growing public awareness that something is very wrong with this area. Recent numerous reports from planes and boats which have had incredible experiences within the triangle and survived are contributing toward a new folklore of the sea, although the cause of the unexplained menace to planes and ships within this area is as mysterious as ever. The most varied and imaginative explanations have been offered and seriously considered to account for the continuing disappearances and assumed, because no bodies have been recovered, fatalities. These explanations include sudden tidal waves caused by earthquakes, fireballs which explode the planes, attacks by sea monsters, a time-space warp leading to another dimension, electromagnetic or gravitational vortices which cause planes to crash and ships to lose themselves at sea, capture and kidnapping by flying or submarine UFOs manned by entities from surviving cultures of antiquity, outer space, or the future, looking for specimens of currently existing Earth inhabitants. One of the most striking suggestions was actually predicted by Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, a psychic and healer who died in 1944. Cayce predicted, decades before the possibility of laser beams was suspected, that the ancient Atlanteans used crystals as a power source, specifically located in the Bimini area, and presumably subsequently sunk in the tongue of the ocean off Andros in the Bahamas, where many of the disappearances have taken place. In this concept, a maverick power source sunk a mile deep to the west of Andros would still be exerting its occasional pull on the compasses and electronic equipment of today's ships and planes. In any case, the explanation or solution to the mystery seems connected with the sea itself, the last and greatest mystery still confronting the inhabitants of the Earth. For although we stand on the threshold of space, somewhat wistfully contemplating the cosmos, while believing that the world, now so thoroughly explored, has no more mystery for us, it is nevertheless true that about 3/5 of the world's area, the abyssal depths of the sea, are about as clearly or even less known to us as the craters of the moon. We have, of course, long mapped the general contours of the sea bottom, first through mechanical soundings and more recently by sonar and exploration by submarine and bathysphere, plus deep-sea camera probes. Charted its surface and undersea currents are presently prospecting for evidence of oil on the continental shelves, and soon perhaps at even greater depths. Cold War activity and increasing reliance on submarine fleets, despite the danger to submarine activity experienced by the French Navy in the Mediterranean and to the United States Navy in the Atlantic, will certainly contribute considerably, if the material is made public, to our knowledge of the sea bottom. Nevertheless, the deepest parts of the ocean may still reserve considerable surprises for us. The abyssal plain and the adjoining canyons and depths may contain unexpected fauna. The extinct coelacanth, a supposedly prehistoric fish with residual limbs, was discovered to be very much alive and well in the Indian Ocean in 1938. This four-legged bluefish flourished about 60 million years ago. Its last fossilized specimen, before the live one was found, had been dated at 18 million years BC. Detailed accounts from reliable observers, many of whom had nothing to gain and much to lose in making a sea serpent report, have sketched or described sea creatures that resemble very much in structure the Pliocene Monosaurus or Ichthyosaurus, apparently still alive and well in the abyssal deep. On several occasions, these creatures have been observed by hundreds of witnesses as they approached beaches and harbors situated at points varying from Tasmania to Massachusetts. The Loch Ness Monster, affectionately called Nessie by the local Scots, and regularly, although indistinctly, photographed, may be a smaller version of these giant fish lizards, as their Greek name, Ichthyosaurus, is translated. Anton Brunn, the Danish oceanographer, once observed a 6-foot eel-like tadpole brought up by a trawler, and its larval form, which, if it grew to adult size in proportion, would be 72 feet long. Although no actual specimen of the giant squid has been secured, there are several indications that they may be fully as large as some of the fabled sea serpents, and in fact may actually be the sea serpents seen by so many observers. The size of these giant squids can be calculated by occasional skeletal remains that have been recovered, and also by disc marks on the backs of the whales, where the suction marks of the squid's tentacles, a result of their titanic struggles in the depths, have taken away the pigment from the whale's hides while leaving the outline. Although we are constantly learning more about life in the ocean depths, most of our observations and recovery of specimens have been haphazard, as if explorers from outer space, to draw an analogy, had dropped nets from their spacecraft in various parts of the Earth and pulled up whatever they chanced to find. Even the sea creatures that we are already familiar with present mysteries in their migrations and breeding habits. The eels from inland Europe and America that meet for breeding in the Sargasso Sea, from where only the young reach the places from which their parents set forth. The tuna that start their migration off the coast of Brazil, travel to Nova Scotia and afterwards to Europe, and then some, but only some, continue to the Mediterranean. The spiny lobsters that march across the sea bottom, down the continental slope, and continue on down to an unknown destination on the abyssal plain. Other mysteries include the great trenches in the oceans, curiously all having approximately the same depth, a staggering 7 miles, and the living creatures that exist on the bottom under such tremendous pressure. Then there are the ocean currents, great rivers in the sea, some of them surface currents, varying in depth, while others flow hundreds of feet below the surface, often in other directions to the surface currents. There is the Cromwell Current in the Pacific Ocean, which some years ago rose to the surface and then subsequently reverted to its subsurface level. Almost all currents turn, those in the northern hemisphere clockwise and those in the southern hemisphere counterclockwise. But why is the Benguela Current an exception, as it flows without turning?
The winds and the waves are further mysteries. The most sudden and violent storms occur in only two places: the hurricanes in the Caribbean and West Atlantic area, and the typhoons in the South China Sea. Sometimes, however, extremely strong waves, called sway waves, appear on an otherwise calm sea. It is believed that these waves come from underwater landslides or earthquakes not noted on the surface or foretold by weather reports.
The mineral wealth of the ocean is presently incalculable, and extraction and exploitation of these mineral deposits, in addition to oil, may considerably affect the financial scene of the future. The protective sea also covers treasures and vestiges of past civilizations. Many of these are evident in the shallow coastal waters of the Mediterranean and the Atlantic continental shelf. But others may lie, for example, more than a mile deep off the coast of Peru, where carved columns have been photographed lying among what may be submerged buildings, indicating a tremendous downward drop of land into the ocean within the era of civilized man. Stories of sunken civilizations persist in many parts of the world's oceans, from lost Atlantis in the mid-Atlantic, the Bahamas, or the eastern Mediterranean, the mysteries of Easter Island, and other lost civilizations of the South Pacific, to the possibility of a civilization now buried under Antarctic ice, once having existed in the Antarctic before the poles shifted. Parts of the ocean floor seem to be constantly shifting. In May 1973, part of the Bonin Trench near Japan rose 6,000 feet. The majority of the 100,000 earthquakes which take place every year occur along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, commonly supposed since ancient times to be the location of legendary Atlantis. Then there is the mystery of the false bottom, frequently revealed by deep-sea soundings, which frequently report a depth much shallower than that previously recorded, and then later give the first reading again. It has been assumed that this false bottom is the result of the temporary presence of banks of fish or other fauna so thick that they present a solid surface from which the sonar bounces off with resultant equivocal information. An equally baffling mystery is the curious glowing streaks of whitewater in the Gulf Stream. This is variously thought to be caused by banks of small luminescent fish, marls stirred up by fish, or radioactivity in the water. Whatever it is, it was noteworthy enough to have been commented on by Columbus 5 centuries ago, and it was also the last light from Earth that the astronauts could see on their way to space. Finally, we have the theory of drifting continents, drifting away from each other through the sea from their original position of being clustered together as a supercontinent. This theory is only now being generally accepted and may have considerable bearing on the rotation, composition, and behavior of the Earth itself. There is a difference, however, between these multiple mysteries, which may eventually be solved and which meanwhile are intriguing to contemplate, and the one posed by the Bermuda Triangle, which introduces an element of danger to the traveler. It is true, of course, that numerous planes fly over the triangle every day, that large and small ships sail its waters, and that countless travelers visit the area every year without incident. Besides, ships and planes have been lost at sea and continue to be lost in all the world's seas and oceans for a variety of reasons. And we must remember to differentiate between lost at sea, which suggests the finding of wreckage or some identifiable flotsam, and disappeared, which implies none at all. But in no other area have the unexplained disappearances been so numerous, so well recorded, so sudden, and attended with such unusual circumstances, some of which push the element of coincidence to the borders of impossibility.
There are many marine or aeronautical authorities who would observe that it is perfectly natural for planes, ships, or yachts to disappear in an area where there is so much sea and air travel, subject to sudden storms and the multiple possibilities of navigational mistakes and accidents. These same authorities are likely to make the comment that the Bermuda Triangle does not exist at all, and that the very term is a misnomer, a manufactured mystery for the diversion of the curious and imaginative reader. The airlines that service the area encompassed by the Bermuda Triangle concur with this opinion with understandable enthusiasm, although there are many experienced pilots who are not so sure of its non-existence. Those who claim that the triangle does not exist are in one sense correct, for the Bermuda Triangle of unexplained disappearances may not be a true triangle, but actually more of an ellipse, or perhaps a gigantic segment of a circle, with the apex near Bermuda and the curved bottom extending from lower Florida past Puerto Rico, curving south and east through the Sargasso Sea, then back again to Bermuda. Those who have most studied the phenomenon are, in general, although not specific, agreement about its location. Ivan Sanderson, who dealt with this subject in Invisible Residence and numerous articles, concluded that it was really an ellipse or lozenge, of which there were 12 others spaced at regular intervals throughout the world, including Japan's ill-famed Devil's Sea. John Spencer considers that the danger area follows the continental shelf, starting at a point off Virginia and going south following the American coast past Florida, continuing around the Gulf of Mexico and including the underwater shelves of the Caribbean islands and the periphery of Bermuda. Vincent Gaddis, author of Invisible Horizons and the article in Argosy magazine, which may well have given the Bermuda Triangle its name, establishes its triangular form roughly within a line from Florida to Bermuda, another from Bermuda to Puerto Rico, and a third line back to Florida through the Bahamas. While John Godwin, in This Baffling World, suggests that the Hoodoo Sea is a rough square whose limits stretch between Bermuda and the Virginia coast, with its southern boundary formed by the islands of Cuba, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. Even the United States Coast Guard, which does not believe in the Bermuda Triangle, obligingly identifies its location to those requesting information about it, in the form letter File 5720 from the 7th Coast Guard District. It begins as follows. The Bermuda or Devil's Triangle is an imaginary area located off the southeastern Atlantic coast of the United States, which is noted for a high incidence of unexplained losses of ships, small boats, and aircraft. The apexes of the triangle are generally accepted to be Bermuda, Miami, Florida, and San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Meteorologists frequently refer to the Devil's Triangle as an area bounded by lines running from Bermuda north to New York and south to the Virgin Islands, billowing fan-wise west to and encompassing 75 degrees WL. A consideration of the map indicating important ship and plane disappearances on page 53 will enable the reader to draw his own conclusions as to the shape of the Bermuda Triangle, whether it is or is not a triangle at all, or perhaps a small triangle within a larger one, a giant ellipse, a square, or a phenomenon paralleling the continental and island shelves. It had long been known in maritime circles that many ships had disappeared in this area, and some of the past disappearances may have contributed to the legend of the Sea of Lost Ships, or the ship's graveyard, located in the Sargasso Sea, part of which lies within the triangle. Records concerning disappearing ships seem to indicate disappearances with increasing frequency since the 1860s, possibly because of more detailed reporting. Disappearances began after the Civil War, thereby ruling out attacks by Confederate raiders. But it was some months after World War II that a startling incident occurred, suggesting that planes flying over the area could vanish from the sky for perhaps the same reason that ships had been vanishing from the sea. This was the incident that gave the Bermuda Triangle its name.